Hello there and welcome. In this episode, we're going to learn how to save a few more things in our game. We already covered the saving of the game in a previous episode, and I also mentioned that it's simply not possible for me to show you how to save every single thing. We need to understand the logic behind the saving system, and then if we understand it, we are going to be able to save everything that we want. The first thing we're going to save are the trees, and it can also be applied to any other thing that is not static in our scene. So if we chopped a bunch of trees and then we load the game, we want them to still be chopped. So if we go to our environment game object, then we can see that we had all of these subcategories. And this is very useful for the saving because when all of these objects are in the same game object, we can simply access them, save them, and then also instantiate them over there. So if we expand the trees, we have all of our trees inside of this game object. Now, if this is not the way it looks for you, if you have some kind of subgroup and then you have a bunch of trees under another parent, just make sure that all of your trees are a direct child of this game object, because then we're going to loop over all of them and get them and save them and then also instantiate them. Now, if you remember, when we chop down a tree, we basically destroy this game object, but then we instantiate the stump. But the problem is that right now the stump will not appear inside this game object. It will simply go and be instantiated in the root somewhere. So we need to change this in order to be able to save all of these stumps. Inside the choppable tree script, we are going to scroll down to this method over here, and after we instantiate the prefab of the broken tree, which is basically the stump, we want to set it to be a child of this tree's game object. So we're going to add, and we basically set this broken tree, this stump prefab, to be a child of the transform parent, transform parent, transform parent. And this basically means that we start over here because the choppable tree script is on this tree base. Then we go up over here, we go up over here, and then we go up over here. And then it's going to make this the parent. So by saying transform parent, transform parent, transform parent, we simply jump to the parent and then to this parent and then to this parent. So now when we chop down a tree, this entire game object is going to be destroyed, but we're going to set the stump to be a child of this game object. So all of our stumps and all of our trees will be all inside this tree's game object. Next, we're going to open our environment data script, and over here we store all the information that is related to the environment. So we already saved the picked up items before, and now we also want to have information about the trees. So we're going to add, and then we're going to create this class over here. So we're going to choose generate class, and it's going to create it inside the same script. Inside the tree data, we're going to have a name, and the name will basically be a tree or a stump. And this way we're going to be able to know what we need to instantiate. Then we are also going to save the position of the tree and the rotation. So each tree data is basically information about one single tree or a stump, because it can also be a stump. Next, we're going to open our environment manager, and this is just a class that contains references to all of these environment categories. So this class is sitting on the environment, and over here we simply dragged the items, but we also want to drag a reference to this tree's game object. So we're going to add, and then we're going to take this tree's object and we're going to drag it inside the inspector. And now that we have access to this trees object and we have access to all of these trees and stumps, we want to actually save and load this information. So inside the save manager, we have all of these different sections, and if we expand the general section, we can find the saving and the loading. So we're going to deal with two main methods. Inside the saving, we have this getEnvironment method, and then inside the loading, we have this setEnvironmentData. So all of our logic will happen over here. After we have access to all of these trees and have access to this game object, we're going to simply add the data inside the setEnvironmentData and getEnvironmentData. So this method is going to happen when we save the game, and this method will happen when we load the game. So inside this getEnvironmentData, we get all the different items that we picked up, and this is something we did previously to be able to save all the items that we picked up, and then we simply set it inside this EnvironmentData class, and then we send it back from this method, and eventually we save it. So now let's add some code to be able to get all the trees from our scene. So over here, we'll simply create a list of tree data, and this is an empty list. Then we loop over all of these children inside this all trees. And this all trees is the one that we had inside the environment manager. So it means that it's this game object. And then we simply loop over all the children. So we loop over all the trees that we have inside. And if we have some stumps, then they will also be inside. And because our trees have this tree tag, we can know if it's a tree, or if it's not a tree, then it's a stump. Then we simply create a new tree data. We set the name to be tree parent, we set the position, and we set the rotation, and then we add them into this list, and we're going to add it into the environment data. So then we go to the environment data. And although we created this list over here, we did not add it into the constructor, so we're simply going to add it now. And we're going to put a little underscore so it will be different from this thing, and then we're going to set it to be the tree data. So now when we want to create this environment data, we have to provide it with a list of tree data. And this is exactly what we do over here. So now it requires a tree data. So we simply take this trees to save list and we pass it inside. And the reason this needs to be the same as the prefab's name, because later we're going to use the name to instantiate the prefab. So now that we got all of this information, when we save the game, we also want to set this information when we load the game. So we're going to scroll down to our set environment data, and over here we're going to set this information into the scene. So the first thing we want to do is destroy all the trees that come as a default with the scene. Because if we chop down all the trees, we don't want to see these default trees. So we simply go over all the trees and we destroy them. Then we want to get all the trees that we actually saved and all the stumps, and we simply loop over all the trees inside the environment data, and we instantiate the trees prefabs, and we place them to be a child of this all trees game object. Now, of course, we provide the position, we provide the rotation, and we also provide the name of the game object that we want to instantiate. So if we open our resources folder, we can find our tree parent over here, and if it's not over here, then simply drag it inside, because previously we did not need to instantiate it, but right now we need to instantiate it. But we also need a stump. Right now we had this chopped tree, and this chopped tree also contains the logs that we pick up. But we don't need this thing over here with the logs. We only need the stump itself. So we're going to Control D, duplicate this. We're going to rename this to be stump. Then inside we're going to remove these two logs. And then we're simply left with the stump. So now you can see that it only has the stump. And this is what we're going to instantiate when we load the game. So now let's see if it's working. Of course, we need to go to our main menu scene, otherwise it's not going to work. So new game. And let's chop down this tree over here. And we can pick up these logs, we can leave them over here, and let's also chop down this tree over here. So remember that we had this tree over here and we had this tree over here. So these are the two trees that are chopped down and we want it to be saved like that. So now we save the game over here. And we're going to load the game. And now we can see that these two trees are chopped down. So this is working. Now we're going to do a few more examples, but I really want you to try to understand the logic. We first get access to all of the items, and then we simply get the information and set the information. And it's going to be the same with all the other items. The next thing we're going to save are the animals that we have in our scene. So we only have rabbits, but you can have any animal that you want. You can have monsters. And because we have an option to hunt down these rabbits, we don't want them to spawn again when we load the game. So we're simply going to access this animals object and we simply loop over all of these rabbits. We get the information and then we set this information. First, we open the environment data and we add a list of strings. Then we add them into the constructor. Then inside the environment manager, we're also going to have a reference to this parent game object. So public game object, all animals. Now we still can't add this game object into the environment because we have this error over here, and this happens because we need to provide it with the animals and we still did not provide it. So let's just take care of this and then we're going to add the reference. So again, we go to this get environment data. So over here, we create an empty list of strings and we loop over all the animal types, but then we have another for each loop inside of this because we also have the animals inside the animals type, right? Over here, we have all the animals, then we have the animal type because we can have rabbits, but we can also have different kinds. So we loop over all the kinds. And inside each kind, we also loop over the individual animals. So that's why we have this double loop. And then we simply add the name of the animal into this all animals list. And then we provide this all animals list into the environment data. And now we can click on the environment and drag the animals object over here. And next we're going to go to this set environment data. So it's always the same. It's always the same two methods. We get the information and we set the information. So inside the set environment data, after we dealt with the trees, we're going to add logic to set all the animals. And this time we're not going to instantiate all the animals. We're simply going to delete all the ones that should be dead already. And we know who should be dead because we saved their names. So we can simply go over here and copy all of this just because we are lazy and paste it. So again, we have these two for each loops because we want to go over all the categories and all the animals, but inside so we simply go over all these animals, and if the name of the animal is not inside our saved environment data, it means that it was not there when we saved the game. And this means that we need to destroy it. And that's all. It's very simple. We simply get the information and then we set the information. So let's start a new game. And we have these rabbits over here, and we have these rabbits over here. Let's kill these two over here. So now if we save the game and we reload the game, these two should be dead. So let's save the game. Let's go back, let's quit, and let's stop the game. And I want you to see what is going on inside the actual file before we load the game. Over here inside the save game, we have animals, and we have the name of the two animals that should be alive, right? And now if we load the game, we can see that these rabbits over here will not exist because we killed them and we saved the game. But these ones do exist. So again, it depends on your game. If you want to save the animals that you killed, maybe you do want them to respawn, but this is how you save it. Again, the important part is that you understand the way we're saving things. The last thing that we're going to save is the storage box. So again, it's the same procedure. We first go to our environment data and we add a reference to the storage box. And remember, we can have multiple storage boxes in our scene. So we want a list of storage box, and we're going to create a class that will store information about the storage box. Storage data. We're going to create this over here. We're going to make it serializable. And we're going to copy all of this. But instead of a name, we're going to have a list of strings, and these will be all the items inside the storage box. And we also want the position and the rotation of the storage box. Then we're going to pass this inside. So that's all for the environment data. Next, we want to have access to this placeables object. And if you remember from the episode that we created the storage box, this is where the storage box is going to be instantiated. So we want access to it. And it means that we need to add a reference inside the environment manager. So we go to the environment manager. And again, we still cannot add the reference because we have this error over here, because we need to pass all the storage boxes into the environment data. So we're going to do this right now. We're going to get all this information about the storage boxes, and then we're going to set this information when we load the game. So again, it's very similar to what we did before. We have an empty list of storage data. Then we go over all the placeables and we check if the placeable is a storage box. And if it's a storage box, it will have this storage box script on it. So if it's a storage box, we are going to create a storage data object. We're going to set the items of this storage data to be the items that we have inside the storage box, right? Because our storage box has a list of strings with the items that it contains. We are also going to save the position and the rotation and store it inside this storage data, and then we're going to provide the entire storage data into this all storage list. And then we're going to take this all storage and pass it inside the environment data. Next, we're going to set the data, so we go once again into this set environment data. And over here, we're going to instantiate these storage boxes in the exact position and set all the different items inside of them. We can scroll over here and grab this part and rename it to storage box prefab. We can replace all the tree with storage. And instead, the tree name, we're going to set storage box model, right? Because this is the name of our prefab over here. Then after we instantiate this storage box prefab, we also want to set all the items inside of it. So storage box prefab. And we want to set it to be a child of this placeables object. This one over here. And now we can also drag the reference. And that's basically it. So again, when you understand this logic, it's very simple. You get the information, you set the information, and that's all. So we're going to start a new game. We're going to place a storage box over here next to the NPC. Then we're going to pick up some stones and some sticks. We're going to open the box and we're going to place 2 sticks and 2 stones inside this box. And now we're going to save the game. We're going to quit and close the game. So now you can see that inside the save game, we also have the storage, and inside we have all the items, and the items are stick, stick, stone, stone, and then we also have the position, and we have the rotation. So now we can start the game, load it, and it's going to instantiate it over here, and if we open it, we can find the 2 sticks and 2 stones inside of it. So everything is working, and I hope that with all of these examples, you have more understanding about the saving system and how to actually save any other thing that you want. So that's all for this episode. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you're still not subscribed, and I'll see you next time.